Welcome back to another episode of Dellet at Large, Aliyah Stories. This is David Levine. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, the word Dellet means immigrant, and Aliyah is the process. It literally means going up. It's the process of going to make immigration to Israel, to becoming a citizen of Israel. I have a very special guest on the podcast today, Roy Freeman. Roy is the founder of LGBT Olim, and in honor of Pride Month, I wanted to ask him to come and tell all about LGBT Olim and his experience as an Olim. Roy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking part. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for inviting me as well. So my name is Roy Freeman. I'm the founder of LGBT Olim. I'm originally from the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent. But I lived in Australia for a few years before I made Aliyah in 2012. So I live in Tel Aviv. I have a husband and two cats. So I manage the LGBT English speakers groups and Korban.
Great. Well, we're going to get into all of those different aspects of the LGBT Olim group. So can you share a bit about your personal journey as an LGBTQ immigrant to Israel and how it influenced the creation of the group?
Okay, that's a good question. So I met my husband when I was living in Australia, and I knew from the start of that relationship that he was planning to return to Israel at some point, and so we decided to give things a go. So after a couple of years, when I could tell that he wanted to return, we started the process.
Your husband's Israeli?
That's right. Yes. So yeah, born and bred.
And you were married already in Australia?
No, we only got married after moving to Israel. So we got married just coming up to 9 years ago.
Great. So you're moving to Israel with your Israeli partner / to be husband, and had you ever visited Israel before?
Yeah, I had. First trip to Israel was when I was 18. I on a month-long with, if I remember, it was a British organisation, the AJC. So it was, they brought a tour, I think about 20 of us, all in the age group of like 18 to early 20s. And so we did, the whole country. We spent a week on a kibbutz. It was a great experience. I also, after university, I was 21, I spent a couple of months on a kibbutz in the north of Israel. And since there have been plenty of holidays over the years. I've been a few times, not sure exactly how many, but more than in 1997. So I came here for 10 days with the idea of making Aliyah, and I stayed with a cousin of mine in Tel Aviv. And at the end of that 10 days, I decided that it wasn't going to be for me at the time. And just to put that into context, I was still very much in the closet. And I guess I was looking for something. I just didn't know what I was looking for at the time. So I went back to the UK and found a new job and put those ideas on ice for a while.
So what year did you make Aliyah, and then when did you start LGBT Olim?
Yep, so I made Aliyah in April 2012, and I started LGBT Olim pretty much a year later. So I knew that Tel Aviv Pride was coming up, and I wanted to be more involved in it. I had previous experience. I'd been to Tel Aviv Pride in 2012, but before that, I was very much involved in the Sydney Mardi Gras when, for the years I lived in Sydney. And they are two very, very different beasts, for want of a better word. Tel Aviv Pride is, very much a march. People walking through the streets of Tel Aviv, generally, not this year so much. And Sydney Mardi Gras is very much a parade in that there's, maybe 100, 150 floats. Every float is organized by a different group. And it's like a military operation. Whereas Tel Aviv is, very much more Israeli and much more easygoing. And it's, people walking along the streets. And I wanted to, I guess, bring people together. I knew I wasn't the only Oleh, the only LGBT Oleh there. And I thought it'd be nice to build something and so that we can march together in 2013.
Excellent. Well, I can tell you, I send you the picture. In 2015, the first time I ever attended a Tel Aviv Pride, I saw your banner. And began following the group ever since then. So almost 9 years. So what are the main goals for the group, and what are some of the main activities that the group does?
So the main goal, I guess, I really wanted to find out how many other LGBT people were moving to Israel. I had already joined an LGBT English speakers group, so that was maybe a couple of months earlier. At the time, there was a group being organized by the Agudah, Israel's national LGBT lobby group. And so I got involved with that, and I started hearing from people from outside of Tel Aviv. Obviously, there are LGBT people outside of Tel Aviv, and I realized that there was a community of people that were really trying to find, there were people that were trying to find a community. And so I created a Facebook page. Facebook was very much, the place to do things in those days. And so I created a Facebook page, advertised it on a variety of groups for, Olim and other Israeli groups and LGBT groups, and basically, tried to get people to find us, to find it. But it started kind of rolling in, and I started a newsletter the year afterwards. So, every month interviewing somebody who had made Aliyah who was LGBT, putting together a list of the events that were coming up, collecting news that I'd heard about that was related to, the LGBT community and so on. And then soon after that, I started trying to find people in other cities so that we could organize events there as well. I started organizing events in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, in Haifa and Beersheba. And again, it was mostly about Facebook, getting people to join the groups, and this monthly newsletter, I guess. And that's pretty much how we've continued. So we do weekly movie nights, we do monthly coffee mornings, we do Shabbat dinners, we do parties around the holidays. So soon next month we've got a party for Shavuot. We also do them for Sukkot and Hanukkah and Purim, etc. And so we do a variety of things. We do karaoke nights, we do pub nights, we sometimes go to the cinema together, we go for meals together. It's just basically social stuff so people can meet each other and build a social network, find friends. Because it's not easy moving to a new country, especially if you haven't worked out the language yet. So it's nice to speak to people and meet people that that you can actually communicate. So that's really the main goal.
That's great. And you mentioned Kilpon before. So what?
Yeah.
The word Opon with a Q.
With a Q.
Is English is Opon is learning Hebrew. So what is Kilpon?
So basically the idea behind Kilpon is for it to be a place where LGBTQ people can come together and practice their Hebrew skills. So we do classes online a couple of times a week. We also have classes in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. We'd really like to get that started again in Haifa. We did it for a while in Haifa as well. And basically it's, because when I first arrived, I remember I heard you saying in one of your earlier podcasts, when you make Aliyah, you get, I think it's about 5 months worth of free Hebrew classes, Opon. And, I did some of that. I think I did my 5 months when I first arrived. And while it was, it's a good experience, I learned a lot of stuff there. In some ways, it was a little bit stifling. There were like 30 people in the class. And it was just very, very heteronormative. And so I thought, wouldn't it be lovely if I could learn the language and just be myself, not have to hide. If I want to talk about pride, I can talk about pride without worrying that someone's going to make some snidey comment. Because sometimes people do. Or if I want to talk about my husband, I can do so freely, or he was my boyfriend at the time. I could do so freely without having to worry about what people are saying or thinking. And so that was really it, So at Kulpan, we often talk about regular, Hebrew stuff, conjugation and grammar and vocabulary and so on. But it means that we can, people that come can ask whatever questions they like. If we want to talk about pride, we can talk about pride. If we want to talk about online dating, we can talk about online dating. If we want to talk about anything related to the LGBT community, we can do so in a safe environment. And, people don't have to, check over their shoulders to make sure that somebody's, that nobody's sniggering at them or anything like that. It's a completely safe place,
Great. And what are some of the challenges that you think LGBTQ immigrants, Olim, face in Israel, and how do you support them? I mean, you even just mentioned now in terms of being concerned about what people might say in an Ulpan class. Are there things that you have identified as challenges that come up again and again for Olim? And are there ways that the group helps with those challenges?
Okay, so I think a lot of the problems that LGBT Olim have are similar to the problems that regular those Olim have in general. But there's other things on top. So as well as learning the language and getting used to the differences in culture and so on. One of the things I found is, and it took me a while to realize this, but growing up in the UK and having lived in Australia and coming from technically Christian countries, you experience a lot of homophobia. Okay, or I experienced a lot of homophobia. You see it on the TV, you read it in the news, people getting beaten up for dressing the wrong way or saying the wrong thing or whatever it is that, these things, the things that people think are criminal and worthy of beating someone up. And then you come to a country where that homophobia just, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but it just isn't, it hasn't permeated society like it has in other parts of the world. And so when I started LGBT Olim, one of the first things I did was go and talk to the Jewish agency, because at the time they were organizing post-Aliyah groups. So they had a group, back then called Connect TLV, which was for under 35 singles. There was another group called Babayit Biyachad, which was aimed at families. And so I went to them saying, well, listen, I'm not under 35 and I'm not looking for a wife and I don't have a wife, I don't have children. So, there's nothing in these groups that you're organizing, for me. And how would it be for the Jewish agency to start up a group for LGBT Olim? And I came away from that meeting a little bit overwhelmed, because I was expecting to be laughed at, I was expecting to be insulted, I was expecting all sorts of things, and none of those things happened. And I left there and I thought I was actually listened to and taken seriously, and it progressed. And for a while we had a group with a Jewish agency called Coming Out, Coming Home. I love that name. And we would get together a couple of times a month, and it would be all about, again, social, meeting people, but also involving with or introducing people to Israeli culture from a queer perspective, from an LGBT perspective. And the fact that happened just boggled my mind. The fact that an agency, technically a government agency, was willing to do that without much convincing. It took a couple of meetings, but there was no homophobia experience at all. And it made me realize that I was living in a very different place. And so one of the challenges, I think, is that, whatever age you are, and again, maybe this is different for a younger generation, but growing up, as I did in the UK, when we weren't even allowed to use the word gay in schools, teachers weren't allowed to talk about it. There was a government legislation called Section 28, where homosexuality was not allowed to be discussed, on pain of, teachers could be fired if they were found to be giving advice to children about it. When you've come from that kind of environment, it's really strange to come to a place where, people come out to their parents. And again, I'm not saying this is universal, but there's just a very different attitude to it. There's much more of an encouragement for people with gay sons and lesbian daughters to get into relationships and have children, which, traditionally wasn't part of gay culture elsewhere until more recently, I think.
Thanks for that. That was a really great answer and very informative in terms of the history and the attitude of the government. So, how does LGBT Olim support LGBT Olim who may feel isolated or marginalized?
That's a good question. I mean, again, most of what we do are the social events. And so I encourage people to come along to social events. I think because it started as a Facebook group, of English speakers groups, a lot of people said, they wanted places to chat and this, that, and the other. And again, maybe it's because of my age a bit, but I think it's much better for people to actually meet up. So I encourage people to come along to the social events. They're not big, loud events. They're often, a brunch or a coffee morning in a cafe somewhere. One of the major things I didn't want to do was to, have nights in nightclubs. It's like, because anyone can go to a nightclub if that's what you're looking for. I wanted it to be much more social. I wanted it to be a place where people could get to know each other and for friendships to be built. So I do encourage people to come along as much as they can, as much as I can convince them. And what else do we do? I deal with emails from people with questions about Aliyah as well, whether they're pre-Aliyah questions. And, with the pre-Aliyah questions, it's a lot about setting expectations, making sure that people don't believe that, the streets are paved in gold, and once they come here, everything is going to be, spring and sunshine. It's, it takes a lot of work to move to a new country, especially a country where you've got to learn a new language and there are, cultural differences and so on. So I think it's important to set people's expectations. And then once people have made Aliyah, helping them in any way we can. Okay, so giving advice about how to find places to live. One thing we do as well, because again, finding a place to rent is difficult. Again, it's a place where some people experience homophobia or transphobia as well. I mean, thankfully, I've not experienced that myself. I've had 2 landladies in Israel, and neither of them blinked when they saw that we were a gay couple. But I realize that's not everyone's experience. And occasionally you're going to come across a landlord or landlady that's an arsehole and doesn't want a gay couple or an LGBT person living in their property. And you know what? If that's their attitude, walk away and let them, find someone who cares? You don't want them to be sitting with a landlord who is constantly going to have a problem with you. But one of the things we do is help people with their contract. Obviously, when you sign a rental contract, it's going to be in Hebrew, and some landlords try to put some funny stuff in their contracts. For example, trying to offload repairs onto the tenant when legally the landlord is responsible for them. Sometimes they ask for exorbitant deposits at the start, and they take liberties. They've got real chutzpah sometimes. So one of the things we do is help translate those and make sure that those contracts don't contain anything strange, and then say, yeah, this looks like a standard contract. The landlord's not trying to take you for a ride. This is safe to sign, and good luck there. So that's definitely a place where we can help. There are groups around that can help people find work, but often, again, networking, I think, is an important part of settling in. So again, it kind of brings back to the social events, people mingling and networking, and finding places to live that way, finding roommates, flatmates, whatever. So that's kind of how we help.
Right. Can you tell me what would be one of your most memorable experiences as part of LGBT Olim?
A couple of things spring to mind. I mean, the story I told you earlier about was the Jewish agency, that being a major realization about a year and a half after moving here, not to expect homophobia everywhere I turn. That was an eye-opener. I'd say walking in Tel Aviv Pride in 2013 with a big banner saying LGBT Olim in huge print and a link to our Facebook page, and just seeing how many people were taking photos. That was interesting. I think a lot of people had never even considered that an LGBT person would think about moving to Israel. There's very much an Israeli attitude of, why would you come here? Of all the places in the world you could live. And, it takes a bit of explaining. It's like, well, you should try living somewhere where, you can get beaten up on the tube in London or whatever. It's, it's nice to live in a place where street crime is, much, much lower in that respect. And so, people taking photos, handing out flyers to people and just general interest. And that first year, we found a lot of new members because, they haven't heard of us. Not everyone's on Facebook. I'm not a marketing guru. So, Pride has kind of become a great way of advertising the group as well. So that's one. That was a great experience. Another one, which is going to sound so self-serving. Last year, we reached our 10th anniversary. And so I thought, this is worth celebrating. So we had a party. We hired a bar, a club called Lima Lima in central Tel Aviv, and we had like over 100 people come, and it was really nice. Some people had only been to online events until now. Did I mention we also do online events? And it was really lovely to see everyone in the same room and know that in some way, I'd like to think that the group had helped them or touched them, or I don't know. For some people, it was possibly their first event as well. But that was a really nice milestone, I think. And, I think it was definitely worth celebrating.
Well, Roy, I can tell you from my perspective, my personal perspective, that I've been getting the newsletter since 2015, and it has absolutely given me comfort knowing that there was this group on the other side of the process. And so it's definitely had an impact on me, 100%.
Thank you. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, it's the truth.
I mean, a lot of our subscribers for the newsletter are overseas. A lot of them in the States or Canada or wherever else. And like I said, it's just good to know that there is something here. It's like, again, one of the reasons I started the group was because in that first year I was here, all I saw online was advertisements for nightclubs and parties. And it's like, well, that's not really my scene. I'm not looking to hook up. I've already got a boyfriend. It would be really lovely if there was something outside of bars that, that I could do and meet other people. But again, where I feel safe, where I don't have to come out repeatedly and justify, who I am and so on, or be asked stupid questions. It's just nice to know that you're in a place where that's all done. It's already on the table.
So you mentioned that you've worked with the Jewish agency. Are there any other groups that you work with or connect to? And if you want to speak about all those interviews on the website, that would be great.
Yeah. So first of all, we kind of have a relationship with Nefesh B'Nefesh. And so I hope this still is in place, but if anyone, the thing about making Aliyah, they're not going to ask you during your Aliyah process, are you gay, lesbian, blah, blah, blah. Some people kind of keep that to themselves. Not everyone comes out as part of their process. And again, there's no need to, if you're not comfortable doing so. So, I kind of call that making Aliyah by stealth. And other people obviously have to, if you're in a same-sex relationship or if you've been divorced or are married, I always said in that order, to someone of the same sex, it's going to come out in the paperwork. They're going to see. And generally, it doesn't make any difference. So, one bit of advice, that wasn't the question, but anyway, is a lot of people are concerned that they can't make Aliyah because they're gay or lesbian or bi or trans or queer or whatever. And, one of the goals, which I don't say enough, is to let people know that, that obviously you're as welcome here as any other person, as any other Jew that wants to make Aliyah. And so that concern needs to be dealt with. And so I've tried to, and a few years ago I actually did like a training session with a number of Aliyah advisors, just to let them know if there's someone, trying to get firstly questions on forums, when they ask you about what community you're looking for, religious, Orthodox, conservative, secular, whatever. And when they try to give you advice as to, whereabouts in the country you should live, they could throw LGBT on that list. And if people want a ticket, they can. And if they do, then they can nudge them in my direction, or at least give them one of our flyers or point them to our website, that kind of thing. So Nefesh B'Nefesh and the Jewish Agency, we kind of have this agreement that, if they hear about anyone that's LGBT, they'll hopefully push them in our direction. Regarding the interviews on the website, when lockdown happened back in 2020, fun times, I decided to interview a bunch of people from, organizers of the other LGBT organizations. So, organizations like Chavruta, which are for religious gay and bi and trans men. There's Bat Kol, which is a group for religious lesbian, bi and trans women. I'm trying to think who else. Well, who else is on that list? Marvarim, which is the organization for trans people. There's IGI, the Israeli LGBT youth organization. So I tried to find people from all of these groups to talk to in English about what their organization does. And, we compiled at least a dozen of them, I think, on the website for people to, the LGBT Olim website for people to watch if they're interested in those organizations. So that was really worthwhile doing. There's also a group called Tehillah, which is like the Israeli P flag, parents and friends of lesbians and gays. And so, it was great to be able to talk to these people and find out why they are involved in the first place. So there's a personal aspect to it as well, and about what their organizations do. It's some amazing LGBT organizations in this country that don't get enough credit for the things they do. So it was nice to give them an opportunity.
There's also an organization for Russian LGBT Olim. Is that correct? I think that was one of the interviews on the site.
That's right. Yeah, there's a group called the Raguda.
Cool.
I'm not sure if I've pronounced that correctly. My Russian is minimal. And they're not specifically for Olim, but they are a group for LGBT Russian speakers. There's also a group, there's a new Olim called, not so new anymore, he's been there a couple of years, called Evit, who has a Telegram group. So I sometimes point people towards Evit when I find out they speak Russian as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Right. There's also a Spanish speakers group as well, but the name I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway.
So if people want to get involved and find out about LGBT Olim, other than there's a Facebook group, how else can they reach out?
So we have a Facebook page for LGBT Olim. There is the monthly newsletter that people can subscribe to. That's also available online. We then have Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups and email lists for the LGBT English speakers groups in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, and Beersheba. So 3 ways of staying in touch with the English speakers groups. And similar for Kolpan as well. So we've got Facebook group and WhatsApp groups and an email list as well. So there's lots of different ways that people can get in touch.
Terrific. Great. All right. Anything that you want to add? Oh, actually, no. One more question. Sorry, I have another question. So, as I mentioned, I first heard about Olim at Tel Aviv Pride, and this year it's going to be a little bit different. So what is LGBT Olim doing for this year's Pride?
That is a very good question. So Tel Aviv Pride is not going to be a march this year. They're going to be doing a rally in Charles Claw Park. There's going to be speeches. I assume there's going to be music as well. but there are going to be stalls. And so community stalls, so different groups are going to be there selling their wares, I guess. So LGBT Olim is going to be at one of those stalls. We are selling T-shirts, although you have to pre-order those. We've got flyers to hand out. We've got fridge magnets. We've got some stickers and so on about the group. So if you're at Tel Aviv Pride at the rally, come and find us. We're also going to be, I guess this is going out after tomorrow. So we're also going to be at Jerusalem Pride, and we're going to be at Haifa Pride and Beersheba Pride.
So wait, no, just do that again. Because it's going to be, I'm going to release it either tonight or tomorrow morning. So,
okay, all right, fine. Okay, so we're also going to be at Jerusalem Pride. So again, this is I think one of the only marches this year. So that's going to be very similar to previous years, but I think a little bit more grounded, a little bit more somber. They've asked for no music, but there'll be a happening that's taking place in Bell Park in Jerusalem, followed by a march, and then speeches and stuff at the end in Independence Park. So we'll be there. So encouraging people to come find us and march with us if you want to. Later in the month, there's also Beersheba Pride, which is also going to be a rally, I believe, and Haifa Pride. Not sure if that's going to be a march or a rally yet, but we plan to be there. So those are the major 4 cities that we operate in, that we have social events at. So yeah, come and find us, or just search for LGBT Olim on Facebook. That's a good starting point, and message us from there, and we can point you in the right direction.
And what about just the general email address? Is info at?
There's info@lgbtolim.org. That's a good place to go. We also have an Instagram. Did I mention the Instagram? So we advertise events on there, and when I remember to, we post photos from events. Well, that's an important point as well. When we have events, we often take a group photo of the people there, and one of the things that we always ask is, does everyone want to be in a photo? If there's anyone who doesn't want to be in a photo, we give them the opportunity to either take the photo or, root to the side. If they're not completely out of the closet, obviously we totally respect. So we have no intention of outing anybody. So we always make sure that we have the consent of the people present before taking group shots.
Great.
Okay.
And last but not least, so
sure.
So I've had an Israeli word of the day for each of my podcasts. Is there an Israeli word that you can give me that could be the Israeli word of the podcast?
Well, let's go for ga'ava.
What?
Okay, that's ga'ava. That's pride.
Nice. Good one. Ga'ava. Pride.
Let me just check that. And also there's also the word ge'er, gimel aleph hey, which sounds a little bit like gay, but is also related to pride. Okay, pause for a second. I need to check.
Yeah. What does gay mean?
Hold on. Oh, you should have pre-warned me on this one. So, ge'er means proud, and ga'ava is pride.
Nice.
Okay.
Pride and proud in Israel.
Yeah. So ge'er is proud. Ani ge'er means I am proud. Doesn't mean I am gay. And I guess you could say yeshli ga'ava. I have pride.
Yeshli ga'ava. Excellent. Roy, thank you so much for being part of the podcast, and thank you so much for LGBT Olim. It's really meant a lot to me, and will continue to mean a lot for people in the future.
Thanks. Can I just say thank you to all the people that helped make it happen as well? Because it sounds as though I'm kind of taking the credit for all of it. We've got 7 wonderful instructors that take that lead the Korban classes online and in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and we have people in the other cities that help us organize events. So thank you to everyone.
Great. Thanks, Roy. That's it for this episode of Ola at Large. Please subscribe. Please follow on one of the different podcast sites. Please shoot over some questions, or if you've got any interest in something around the topic, please let me know. Thanks. This has been a Dellet production for Lightboat Media.